Election 2013. What does the Left Party want? In the interview, Left Party leading candidate Sahra Wagenknecht.
Ms. Wagenknecht, the world is seeing social protests. The euro crisis is dividing society, yet your party, which emphasizes social justice, isn't benefiting. Why is that?
We're polling at a steady 7 to 9%. That's not bad. For a long time, there was no left wing in Germany with that kind of support. But that's still not good enough. I think the basic problem is that many people don't think their voice makes much of a difference, so they might stay home. And of course, we're also suffering because the SPD, the major opposition party, hasn't come up with a candidate who's a real threat to Chancellor Merkel. That means there's no serious chance of building a left-wing government. No one expects Peer Steinbrück to do anything differently from Merkel, and that's her guarantee of staying in office.
Are other parties taking away your big issues? The Christian Democrats are gaining on social justice. The new rightist AfD party is anti-Euro. Are they poaching from you?
They're not, because they're not credible. When you see Merkel discovering the idea of rent control after she's been in power for years and has done nothing to stop the explosion of housing prices, it's nothing more than a campaign joke. People can see right through that. What we have to make clearer to people is how important it will be to have a strong left opposition in the Bundestag. Whoever ends up in government, I think it'll be a grand coalition, that will decide if those in power will dump the costs of the euro crisis onto regular folks.
Aber egal, wer da drin sitzt, ob sie sich trauen wird, die Kosten der Krise auf die kleinen Leute abzuwälzen.
There's not much you can change in the opposition, but you guess you'll be there because the SPD doesn't want to work with you.
Weil die Sozialdemokraten mit ihnen nicht zusammenarbeiten wollen. Ja, weil Herr Steinbrück das
Steinbrück made that clear. That means the SPD doesn't take its own election promises seriously. If they did, they'd have to rule out a coalition with the FDP because that party is against a minimum wage. We can't have a coalition with the CDU because they're against regulating banks. Then they'd have to say they'd consider governing with the Left Party. But they're not saying that. So the signal they're sending is, we've got this great left-wing platform, but the SPD's own candidate doesn't take it seriously.
And what's the first thing you would change?
We'd fight to change the labor market, put an end to the scandalous conditions we're seeing. People slaving away for just 5 or 6 euros an hour. People working full-time and still having to go to unemployment offices and collect welfare. We want to outlaw the subcontracting of labor. We want to ban employers from stringing workers along with one short-term contract after another and ensure proper working conditions for people. Then there are pensions. It's intolerable that people who've worked hard their whole lives, even average earners, can't live on their state pensions. We want to keep the retirement age at 65 and make sure that people can retire with a secure standard of living. Of course, it takes money to make all that possible, so we say, have millionaires and multimillionaires pay wealth taxes. We have such an unbelievable concentration of wealth in Germany. And at the same time, we have poverty in the public sector. We have municipal governments on emergency budgets. We've tossed out lots of money to save the banks, and meanwhile there's not enough money for health services or for equipping hospitals.
But Germany is collecting more taxes than ever before. The state has money. Why tax hikes?
That's a fairy tale. As a share of GDP, we don't have more tax revenue. Of course, every year the figure is higher because our money is also worth less. Factoring in the big tax breaks for the rich in recent years, there's actually a drop in tax revenue. We do have high tax revenues from excise duties, for instance. Middle-income earners bear a huge share of taxes. That's another thing we want to change. We want to give relief to people making 6,000 euros a month or less. But when people are raking in millions, we think the state could tax them more. And what's really important is fighting tax evasion. These days, we're seeing corporations paying just 10% in tax, while millionaires and billionaires watch their fortunes grow in tax havens and effectively don't pay any tax.
Who would pay wealth tax? People with life savings of 100 or 150,000 euros think they'd bleed.
No, absolutely not. We say that in our election program and we stand behind it. It would start at 1 million euros in private wealth and 5 million in net business assets. Companies' debts would be factored in. People this wealthy should do their part for the good of the community. It shouldn't be the low-income workers getting bled with excise duties, sales tax, energy tax, and so on. I think that's an unfair tax burden.
What can you do to help create new jobs?
We want jobs, but more importantly, we want good jobs. The government is so proud of its alleged jobs miracle. But their miracle means more and more people forced to work several part-time jobs and the creation of more low-wage part-time jobs. We want to promote steady, full-time jobs. That means stemming this whole sector, making it illegal. We want a minimum wage of 10 euros an hour. It's a matter of human dignity.
How does that create jobs?
It will create jobs. If people earn more, when wages rise, people's buying power rises too. The German economy is so concentrated on promoting export. We've got export surpluses, but there's little domestic demand. That's because pensions are a disaster and wages have been shrinking for over 10 years.
Can Germany's 80 million people really close that trade gap against billions of consumers worldwide?
We don't have to stop exporting, but a completely one-sided concentration on export means that suppliers trying to sell here in Germany need domestic demand. Craftsmen need demand here in Germany. Construction companies don't export their goods. It's important for them that towns have the money to fix their streets, that ordinary citizens have the money and the stability to build homes. These investments, this demand, can only be created right here at home. Over the past years, it's been neglected.
Your party says it doesn't want to get rid of the euro, but you've said, quote, the euro is impoverishing entire countries, and that's fueling hatred among the people. So what is then your policy?
Our election program clearly states we're not the ones who want to get rid of the euro. It's those in power who are destroying its foundations. The euro has a future only if economic inequality is solved. When we see what's happening in Europe, with some countries where a quarter of the people are jobless, where over 60% of youth have no chance at employment, these are conditions comparable to the Great Depression. We say it's a scandal how much money is being spent yet again to rescue banks across Europe. Yet apparently there's no money to boost investment in Greece. Companies in Spain and Ireland can't get loans because banks won't give them any. This is no way to help these countries back on their feet. If Berlin's policies don't change, if we in Germany don't see higher wages, then we'll end up splitting Europe and destroying the euro. Many economists accept the golden rule that wages should be tied to productivity. The country that's veered away from that the most is Germany, where we've seen wages drop over the years, while unions have fought for increases in other countries.
Germany's economy is the strongest in Europe.
Not exactly. Germany has been more competitive than other countries because of dropping wages. But in terms of people's own prosperity, we haven't made any progress. Instead, we have a shrinking middle class. We have lots of people who are much worse off than before. It's not all about abstract economic at data here, we should also look at life expectancy and birth rates. In those terms, Germany's not doing too well. In Europe, France is the leader.
How unified is your party really? You've got politicians who were part of the radical left in West Germany and communists from the former East. Is that an issue?
We are a party with different traditions. Everyone knows that. Of course, we have differing views on some things, but I think our last party conference showed clearly that we have plenty of common ground. We passed our election platform almost unanimously. It has the issues we all want to fight for. That's why the Left Party was founded. It wasn't founded for us to argue with each other. Unfortunately, in the last few years, we did argue too much. But now the Left Party has stabilized, and we stand together. That means during the campaign and afterward, as a force for social change in this country.
Your partner is another prominent Left Party politician, Oscar Lafontaine. Are you like the Kirchners in Argentina or the Clintons? One of you picks up where the other stops? Or do you argue at the kitchen table?
It's not that one of us is quitting and the other's starting. I've been in politics for 20 years, and I've held political office for many years. We agree on many things and see some differently. It's exciting to exchange and discuss ideas. But we don't just talk politics. That would be pretty sad. We have other things in common too.
Though you don't like it, you're known as the glamorous face of the Left Party. That could have advantages. You're famous, get interviewed in women's magazines. Why doesn't your party use that? Instead, they put you in with 7 other candidates.
Maybe we have so many good people that we couldn't choose just one. Others might see that differently. I think all of us are putting up a good campaign, and I hope we win over many voters.
Thanks for talking to us.